to the show. I'm here with Christian Taylor.
Hey, Phil.
Hi. And Sky Jitani.
Hi, Phil.
Hi, Sky. That's not an approved mug.
Why not?
Because it's not a Star Trek mug.
But
You're
at
only
least
supposed
it's
to
not.
Yeah, it is. This is space.
Really? The blackness?
Yeah.
The blacky?
The blackness
the
of
inky
space.
blackness of space?
That's right.
Did you think that ahead of time, or was that
I did not.
spontaneously
That
generated?
Was spontaneously generated.
You'd be great at improv, you know?
And you could be an
do have a
improv
sparkle
preacher.
on your chin.
What?
I don't see it anymore. Oh, wait, I do see it. Yeah.
You're
It's
sparkling
like where
today.
your soul patch would be. It's one tiny piece of glitter.
I heard you look like Pitbull last week on the podcast.
Yeah, Bill, our director, decided to insert an image of me for those of you who saw
I didn't
the-
even see it because I don't watch the show. I don't watch
But
this.
I liked that little, what is that called? When
It's not a
a
soul,
soul patch.
It is a
but
soul
it wasn't
patch.
a patch. It was like a little line.
Yeah. I
Oh
like
yeah,
that.
the Pitbull thing.
Yeah.
The Pitbull stripe. His is racing stripe. 'Cause,
Okay.
Like he's an old pair of Adidas.
It's like a.
And you're so green.
I am.
Is it St. Patrick's Day?
No, it is not. It is, I
What's
need
with the
something to
green?
go with my pink pants day.
There you go.
You
green
can
shirt,
kind of
pink
see
pants.
them down
What do
through
you do?
the-
green shirt, pink pants. All right, I'm going to sing the theme song as no one in particular. No, I'm going to pick somebody. Sunday school lady. Hello, it's a podcast. What do you know? Hello, it's a podcast. And they've got video, but no magic flannel graph. Hello, it's a podcast. So lend an ear. The Phil Vischer podcast starts right here. You don't drink while I'm singing, Sky Jitani. You put that down.
Why? I
You
don't.
got caught.
You're not giving me 100% of your attention.
Oh, my.
How are you going to learn about Jesus?
It isn't like I'm singing.
We'll talk to Sky, but he won't listen to me and Christian too. And we've got a guest here just for you, but you don't know who it is.
And it's not really here.
And he's not exactly here in the normative sense of the word. But I teach Sunday school, so I don't care about normative. Hey, it's a podcast, so let it here. The Phil Vischer podcast starts right here. The Phil Vischer podcast starts right here. I'd accelerate at the end because I realized our theme song was running way over.
That was kind of a little Irish lady in the end.
Way over. No.
I mean, what's it like being inside your head? Are there like
What
all
would my
these?
frame of comparison be
Well,
to that?
okay, so let me ask more specifically.
It is what I know.
Do you have lots of little voices talking to each other in there?
No.
Do you ever talk to yourself in voices?
Yes.
Like out loud or just in your head?
Out loud, that's where new voices come from. It's from playing around with the voice.
Mm-hmm.
Like I want to make some new stuff, and I need some new characters, so I've been playing around with actually. I've got like 3 new characters on my phone.
Do you want to debut them on the podcast?
No, never. No.
Are any of them ethnic stereotypes?
Every character I've ever done is some form of an ethnic stereotype, as far as I can tell, except for the little American kid with the sinus problem.
How does that sound?
Well, Percy P. He's
Oh.
just, he's not ethnic. He's just
congested.
He's disabled. he's sinusally disabled. Cynatically.
If you were to list all of your characters out,
Yeah.
how many would
They
there?
would stretch from here to the moon if you laid them end to end.
That's a lot of characters.
If each one was approximately 1,000 miles long, which in my mind they are. So I had a little adventure last night.
What was it?
For the second time in a month, I drove myself to the emergency room.
Last time it was for the tick.
Last time it was because I had a bump on my stomach that had legs.
And you were not asexually reproducing.
No, I was not. No.
Thank goodness.
I was concerned that an alien was
scary.
trying to bore inside me to lay alien eggs that would then burst out of my chest later at an unfortunate time and
Eat your family?
Yeah, and eat my family.
Well, you are into puppets.
I don't know what that has
What
to
does
do with
that have to
Remember that scene from Alien was a puppet. The thing that.
Not in the story, just because
Yeah,
they
he
had to
still looked
make
like a
it.
puppet,
Yeah, no. If you like Mr. Rogers, doesn't mean you're into puppets.
Whatever.
Did you like
lady-
Mr. Rogers? Is that how you got
Yes.
started?
I was, yeah.
Me
Who
too.
didn't like Mr. Rogers?
I don't know. I love Mr.
So
Rogers.
the first time it was the tick. It was
Yeah.
the tummy bump with legs.
Okay. That was last month.
That was 4 weeks ago on Sunday.
Okay.
So almost a month. So last night, I'm leaving town tomorrow for the weekend, so I didn't have time to mow, or won't have time to mow over the weekend, so I decided to mow last night. So I was mowing my yard, and then it's a big yard, and it throws up all sorts of dust and blah in the air. And I got dust in my eyes, and I was blinkety-blinking, and I finished, and I came inside, and I'm blinkety-blinking, and I was watching TV, and I was kind of rubbing my eyes, and then all of a sudden, this eye started to hurt real bad.
Yikes.
Say that again.
He's pointing to his left eye for our listeners.
I'm pointing to my left eye for those of you either at home listening or those of you that are visually impaired and trying to watch and can't focus on me.
So far this sounds like a boo-boo more than an emergency room.
I had to go to the emergency room.
You drove yourself with
How could you drive if you can't see?
Were you covering one eye?
And does your family not really care? They don't take your injuries seriously?
My wife's out of town.
Oh.
So it started to hurt real bad. Like way badder than it should have if it was just a little piece. I got something in my eye. So I went to the bathroom.
Did it feel like a plank?
I'm trying to get it. I had a plank in my eye. My theology was bad. I was accusing my daughter of a little transgression, and suddenly I realized I had a plank in my eye. I couldn't see anything. I couldn't get it out. I used her saline. I was squirting it all over my eyeball. Nothing was working, and I couldn't even open it because it hurt so bad. That's bad, isn't it?
That's very bad.
So what do you do? And your wife can't help you because she's in Minnesota.
But you do have a child that drives.
So
2 of them, actually.
yeah. One was, I don't know, gone. And the other one had to go to bed because she had a final today. So it was like 9 o'clock at night. So I drove myself to the ER. It's only like 2 miles from my house.
That's not good.
It's only 2 miles from my house. I had
Temptation
one
is too
eye.
strong.
I had one good eye. I just had no depth perception. So I just kept driving up over the curb. Bum, 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 bum. That's how you know you're still on the road, when you feel the curb.
Yeah. Okay.
So I
Okay, so anyway, you get to the emergency
I drove to
room.
the ER. I got a towel. There's a little towel on my eye because it hurts if I don't push on it. But if I push on it with my hand, and I get all cryy and sweaty. So I have a little towel. I'm holding over my eye, and I go up and say, I got something in my eye. They say, okay, go sit down. We'll call you in a minute.
5 hours later.
I see there's a couple, an elderly couple sitting. The man has crutches. They're sitting there, and it looks like they're smiling at me.
You don't need to hold your hand up there
I'm
anymore.
showing you what I was doing. So I'm
okay.
standing there with my eye covered, and this couple, and I was like, they must be looking at someone else. So I ignore them. I sign in. I get the thing on my wrist that says,
You're admitted.
yes, this idiot has something in his eye.
In case he
and
forgets himself, we have a
demanding
band.
medical attention. And so I go to sit down and walk by them, and they say, Phil. I was like, what?
I can't see you. Who are you?
And they say, we're whatever and whatever from your church.
We're the ghost of Christmas past.
Yeah, so they went to our church, I guess, or they go to, I don't know.
Who were they?
I don't know who they were, but I'm like, yeah, I have something in my eye. And I don't really want to talk to them because my eye.
I hope
wanna
they're
talk
not
to
listening to the podcast. Please forgive him. He just gets like
I
that
don't think they're
sometimes.
listening to the podcast.
He doesn't like to talk to people when he's
I
not
don't want
injured.
to talk to people, but no, when I can see them with both eyes.
I know.
So I had no depth perception. I didn't know how far I was
You were
from them.
hurting?
I might have been touching noses with them. I have no idea. So I went and sat down. And I was like, you shouldn't just, if you're in the emergency, like, how are you? Hey, what's up? Well, I'm in the emergency room, so that should be a clue that things aren't fine. Why are you talking to me? People shouldn't talk to each other in the emergency room.
You are so Northern European.
Thank you.
Really?
Oh, yeah.
Why is that Northern
Because they tend to be more private, mind your
Yeah.
own business.
What's
Don't talk to me.
What's an Indian emergency room like? Because you had an injury in India.
Yeah, but I was out in the boondocks at the time, and
Yeah.
the only space they had for me was in the maternity ward. So I had to lay down on a table only backwards, so the stirrups were up by my head.
Are you serious?
I'm dead serious.
This is for real.
This is for real. I had passed out, and I have this scar on the back of my head. Sometimes people can see
I
it.
see.
Over here.
Oh,
Yeah.
wow, that's a big one.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and then so I
yeah.
pass out, and I'd split my skull open, basically. And so it was like 180 degrees outside, or some ridiculous temperature. And we get into this little rural hospital, and my dad, who's a physician, gets in an argument with the doctor who's there, because he's saying, this is my son, let me suture him up, blah, blah, blah. And they got in this argument because the other doctor was saying, what, you think you're from America? You're some big shot? I can't do a simple suture. So after a while, my dad's like, just do it. Fine, do it. And then he's about to stitch me up, and my dad goes, "Whoa, wait a minute. What about the Novocaine or the painkiller?" He's like, "We can't waste Novocaine on something like this. This is nothing. It's only like a 5-inch gash in someone's head.
It's a flesh wound.
It's a flesh wound." So my dad leaned down. I was 19 years old at the time. He leaned down and he said, "Just so you know, this is really gonna hurt." And the guy just stitched me up with thread and a needle with no painkiller whatsoever.
That's exciting.
Yeah, it was great.
Can I
and
get back to
thankfully,
my story
I did
now?
not get infected. See, I had an actual injury
Yes, you
that
did.
required medical
Yes.
attention.
I had
Phil
to
had an
hold
eyelash
one of
in his
my
eye.
eyes shut because it hurted.
Okay.
So I finally got in, and I had to wait a long time. Well, I went in for triage. You have to go in for triage first, and you meet a nurse and says, "Why are you here?"
And they take your
I'm
weight.
holding a towel over my eyeball, and she says, "So why are you here?" I was like, "What? I have gas." "Why do you think I'm here?" "My eye hurts."
Gas out of your eye.
I have eye gas. And so she says, "Oh, but do you think there's anything in there right now?" "I don't know. I couldn't see anything." She says, "Well, there's a chance you scratched it, and that hurts a lot, but eyes heal fast." So, like, okay. So I went back out. She said, "No, it'll be forever before the doctor can see you." So I went back out. So I'm just sitting around the waiting room.
Good thing you're not a veteran.
Oh,
Ain't that the truth?
Yeah, that's a different story, Sky.
I'm
We're
sorry.
not going there.
It's a terrible
I'm
story.
sitting around the emergency room, and they've redone our hospital, right? Have you been
It's
to?
so nice.
I know, it's like the Ritz.
It
It's
is.
like you're staying at a high-end hotel.
It is.
I'm still covering my eye.
But my
and I'm not
favorite
sure
part
why.
is the children's section.
I'm not a children.
it's
I haven't been in that
fabulous.
section.
It's even better than the
but
regular one.
It's interesting because there's cognitive dissonance because you're sitting in a room that feels like you're in the lobby of the Ritz-Carlton, but everyone there is miserable,
Is moaning.
and poorly dressed, and on the verge of vomiting. So
Yeah.
it's like miserable people. It's like people from a bus station in a Ritz-Carlton. So the woman right across from me was holding a big bucket in front of her because she was throwing up. It's like, that's not the Ritz-Carlton. I'm not, I'm having, this is not, you're not giving me the full Ritz-Carlton experience. You need to upgrade your clientele, not just the walls, not just the
You're
furniture.
thinking about all this while you're sitting there with your hand like this?
It's like, this is weird because it's a bunch of people that don't seem to want to be here at all. Why do they need such a nice place to not want to be in?
You would have been okay if it was a miserable environment with
If it was a
miserable
bus
people.
station.
No, it didn't need to be miserable. I just wasn't sure why it needed to be so deluxe. Does it make having your arm broken more? Does anyone ever say,
Let me just tell you something.
"Ow, I broke my
If
arm.
I had
Take me to that hospital with a really nice
If I had a choice
waiting room."
of going to a dingy, dirty, not updated hospital and one that looks like the Ritz-Carlton, where do you think Christian's going to go?
But do you have a choice? Most
yeah.
people don't.
Of course you can
really.
go to any hospital you want to go to.
Yeah, but you're going to drive by one to go to one that's a half an hour farther
If mine
away?
was cruddy with bad doctors, heck yeah.
Okay, fine. So I finally got in, and you know what they do? So they put some stuff in my eye. She said, "This is going to sting," because it was some, I don't know, what, antibiotic or painkiller or something. But it hurts. Painkiller shouldn't hurt, should it?
Well, at first
that
they do.
seems counterproductive.
At first they do. Like, you get a stick in your arm. That hurts.
Did
But then
get,
you feel
like,
better.
A whole
Like
plank,
the epidural?
Like the plank in my eye?
Yeah.
You got a stick in your arm?
Yeah.
So she puts that in, and then she has this little piece, like a little piece of paper that's bright red on the end, and said, "I have to put some dye in your eye." She put dye in my eye, and then she looked at it under a microscope.
It's like a Dr. Seuss book.
And apparently, yes, I hop on pop with dye in my eye. So she's looking at my eye under a microscope, and the dye supposedly will collect wherever, if there's an abrasion, any kind of a cut. And she didn't see anything at first, so she had to do it twice. Had to put dye in my eye twice. And then she looked again. She said, "Aha, you've got some little tiny scratches, a series of them right across the middle of your eye. You probably got something kind of sharp stuck under your eyelid. And when you were trying to blink it away, it actually scratched multiple times your eye." And so she gave me some drops, and then the drops helped. And then I went home and I went to bed. But I was thinking while I was there, do you know what I was thinking?
There is no telling.
Is it about Beyonce?
I was thinking, what if I have to wear an eye patch? And I'm supposed to do the podcast tomorrow morning.
You'd be Pirate Pete.
And then I thought it'd be like I'd have to just say, "This is a pirate podcast," and I'd have to do the whole thing in character. And then by the time they told me I don't need, because when I left, I said, "Do I need an eye patch?" And they said no. I was kind of
You
disappointed.
were wanting a eye
Did
patch.
you say, "Can I have one anyway"?
Yeah, it's like that could really be fun to have an eye patch.
I'll bring you one next week.
My eye's feeling better though.
Clearly.
See?
Yeah.
I can use it.
Jinx.
See, I'm winking at everyone with my eye. And my tick bite's getting better too, but I won't show it.
I'd love to see
I won't
that.
show it to America.
I think we just need to change this podcast into
To a health report?
yeah, adventures and
I don't think I'm going to get Lyme disease because it's been almost 4 weeks.
well, I
that's
think everyone
that's
can
wonderful.
exhale now.
Yeah, and they said like 2 to 3 weeks. But every time I got one of the symptoms, like headaches are a symptom of Lyme disease. So every time my head hurt at all, I was like, oh,
You're
no.
such a hypochondriac.
Oh, no, Lyme disease and sore joints is another one of the symptoms.
Yes.
So I went and worked out the other day, and afterwards my knees were sore because I was doing knee somethings, and I thought, uh-oh, Lyme disease. Then I thought, well, okay, if this stays and the headache comes back, that'd be like, because the third one is a bullseye rash. Mm-hmm. So like, I don't see a bullseye rash, but what if it's in a part of me where I never look? There are places on you where it's very hard for you to look. What if that's where your bullseye rash is? And what if the headache...
But wouldn't the bullseye rash be where the tick bit you?
No one ever said that.
I think that's
I've been wondering about that ever since. Could it just be anywhere? Could it be behind my ear?
No, it's where the tick bit you.
Yeah. Really?
But you know what? I am so sorry I asked what is in Phil's head because clearly now we know. Mm-hmm. And
well, it's a slow news week.
Yeah. Oh, really?
So I thought
there's a lot of news. What have you been reading?
Like what?
Well, my goodness, people are retiring all over the place.
People are retiring. That's the news.
Well, I
this
mean,
week?
stepping down.
Did you see the cover
and getting
of Time
in
magazine?
trouble. And
no, I haven't. It hasn't come to my house yet.
The cover of Time magazine is something about the transgender moment.
Yeah.
Like, are we now having made all these advances in
you pointed that out
gay
to me.
lesbian rights? Are we now on to the LGBT?
But I don't even know what that means.
T part of the.
I haven't read the article, but I don't even know what is a transgender moment when we all become transgender.
Well, I think it's the moment.
But it was a tipping point.
now we're going to focus on those instead of just gay.
Does that mean we're done thinking about gay people?
Right. That now it's bi and transgender.
Right.
Remember when we used to think about minorities?
Yeah, well, these are
that was like for 30 years.
These are sexual minorities now.
You can talk now.
I think.
Okay.
But the whole point was that just as the culture has become very accepting of gays and lesbians and bisexuals to a larger degree, is it now time for the culture to move in the same direction with transgender people? So I haven't read the article. I just saw part of it online.
They were all, because we were all LGBT, and they're in there. They're one of, if I'm pretty sure, they're either the Q, the L, or the T.
LGBTQ.
Yeah, what's the Q? Queer?
Queer.
Well, that's gay.
No.
That's redundant.
I think it's different.
It's more like drag queen, I think.
Well, trans...
maybe we should stop talking about this because we don't really know what we're talking about.
That never stopped us before.
Let me just say that.
Maybe we should read the Time article. And then...
Your whole point was it was a slow news week, and I think when you have a transgender person on the cover of Time magazine saying this is the moment, that's news.
But that issue has not come to my house yet. You saw it online.
Yeah.
Yeah, I get Time in the mail. So there's a pony somewhere with my
female?
copy on the back.
We don't transgendered know. Male.
Maybe a little of both.
We can talk about.
I do. I had a thought.
Oh gosh!
Here
we go again.
That made me feel even more sympathetic toward women than I already felt.
Oh, let me hear.
Is that possible, Phil?
And I'm a very
yes, it's very possible.
I'm a
Trust
very
me.
sympathetic person.
You may be.
Why are you looking at me like that?
Because you may be a sympathetic person on the inside.
I'm an introvert. I'm an introverted
But on
sympathizer.
the outside, it's hard to tell.
Yeah, so I was watching TV. Have you seen television?
Last night, I was actually watching America's Got Talent.
Okay, that's television. And I was watching, and there were ads, and there was talk shows, and I think maybe I was working out again. And there's talk shows, and there are ads, and there's women, lots of women on TV.
There are.
They're all really pretty.
Yes.
Like all of them.
Yeah.
And it occurred to me that you don't see an average woman on TV, for the most part. There's the occasional Whoopi Goldberg, someone who's really funny, but you don't. But you do see average men on TV.
This is a revelation?
Yeah, really.
This has been like human history.
Yeah, because television hasn't been around that
whatever
long.
Media is out there.
Yes, so advertising focused on pretty ladies to sell tonics,
anything,
whatever, corsets, whatever,
cars
through history. But you didn't see them, 24 hours a day. In the 1800s, you weren't growing up. So I felt really, really suddenly, I felt bad for women. Because if you're a man, what, Sky, why are you looking at me? I'm being sympathetic here. If you're a man...
You're a little late to the game.
And you're average, just like an average-looking man, you see yourself in the media. Like it's, hey, there's Adam Sandler. He's average. He's actually uglier than I am. So, hey, I'm valuable. If you're an average-looking woman, you never
Write that guest
see
off.
yourself. You never see yourself in the media. What? It's like only the extraordinary women even exist.
Okay, it's simple. I don't know why it's taken him this long to figure this out.
It hasn't. He just wants to discuss.
So, in general,
Yeah.
women throughout history have been compared to other women based on their physical beauty.
Yeah.
Men have been compared to other men not on their physical appearance, but on their power and wealth.
So, Adam Sandler.
So
Andy
when men
Samberg.
compare each other to themselves, they're not
Okay.
primarily looking at how handsome is he or how ugly am I.
Yeah.
It's what does he drive?
But women-
what does he do?
but-
What's his title? Well, how much money does he have?
But women
Or
don't-
how beautiful is the woman on his arm? So that's the thing.
But women don't pick the women to be on TV.
Let me just
Sometimes
say
they
this.
do.
I think I
not
have
historically.
a little bit to say in this discussion.
What do you think?
Should we actually ask the
Christian-
opinion of a woman?
Christian, do you know any women that could help us with this?
I think I may know one that
What do you-
can speak on several
What's
levels
your
about
point
this
of view?
topic.
What's your point of view?
So, first of all, as a woman, I don't know if you know this, but women primarily dress for women. Do you know this? Have you heard this?
yeah.
That's disappointing.
Except
I
the
know.
ones that go trick or treating as like sexy witches and sexy. Do they dress for women and sexy vampires and sexy pirates?
I am overgeneralizing,
and
but you
sexy
know,
kittens?
however we dress, we go to another woman and say, "How do I look? And don't I look awesome?"
Yeah.
And you really care about what your girlfriends think.
Okay.
Okay. And so you want to make sure that you look like your friends or better. Mm-hmm. So
Who do men dress for?
I don't.
Success.
I don't know.
Thank you.
I don't know. I can't speak to that.
And Peyton Manning. He
So-
wears jersey. So that if he sees you in the street, he says, he gives you the thumbs up. That's how football players talk. Okay, so
And so that's part number one. So
Yeah.
when I look at television and I'm looking at all these other women, I think, ooh, I want that dress, or I want my hair to look like that,
Right,
or
right.
So it's sort
Yeah.
of like the ideal.
Advertising is all aspirational.
But right.
Yeah.
And the second point is, as an actress, almost every single solitary breakdown I get for things I should submit for
yeah.
are, it will say,
Yeah.
average looking female and give you an age range and
Okay.
say, but fit and, bright or whatever.
Okay.
So
And
it's
bright's not an intelligence term.
correct.
But the
Meaning-
average woman is not fit.
Correct.
In America or most
Correct.
of the world.
So I
they
get
don't
the-
even want average.
Right. That's what's so interesting.
Average
So-
looking, but better than that, really.
Yeah.
So they send out these breakdowns, and I get them every week, hundreds of auditions, and I just scroll down because I know when they say average, they don't mean average.
Yeah.
They mean beautiful and
But not
normal
distractingly
looking.
so.
Correct.
Not distractingly.
Not stunning.
When
Yeah.
they want one of those,
Yeah.
they'll say,
What do they say?
hot model or hot
Oh.
model type.
Hot model.
So you have,
Like
those
a hot
beautiful women are like, model type.
Okay, I have a
Beautiful woman.
I want to go a question deeper.
Okay.
From why are there only better than average looking women on television?
Yeah.
Where-
Not just better than average.
where are
like this small class, this tiny
Yeah.
class of exceptionally rare, but is everyone on TV?
Yeah.
100%. Well, except for Barbara Walters and
Wow.
who did it? Well, she's kind of funny looking.
I will say it is changing. It is changing.
Is it?
Yeah, it is because they, L.A. and New York actually are coming more to Chicago, and they're casting.
Because that's where average lives.
Yes.
Why? Because of bratwurst?
Nope. Because in New York and L.A. there's an incredible pressure to
Okay. So no one wants to be average.
Exactly. If they want to succeed and be in all these top television shows,
Yeah.
they have to be this big and they have to be very fit.
Yeah.
And so a lot of times producers go
When
outside
she said
of
this big, she held up one finger.
one finger.
It
Well,
was
they
her
have
index
to be
finger,
as big
let's be
as
clear.
one
one
finger.
So they are coming to the middle of America to find more. And that's why I would get a shot at an
Yeah.
insurance commercial as opposed to,
Yeah.
Okay, so my question
okay.
is, how is this also true within the church world? Like, are there what we would consider average or below average looking female Christian singers or artists who are widely
Speakers, Joyce Meyer.
speaker? I'm
There,
not,
I
I'm not
came
going to
up
go
with
into
one.
Phil's territory here of
Sandy
actually
Patty's-
naming folks that may or may not reach.
Sandy Patty started out kind of extraordinary and then put on a lot of weight. But I don't know if can you think of a Christian singer who started out very heavy, female, and stayed popular? Because I know some that started out pretty thin, and as they got older, put on a lot of weight.
Well, there is Adele. She's not a Christian singer, but...
Yeah, I know, and people make fun of her.
No, they don't.
Yeah, they did, because they were like people...
They say she's beautiful, and she is.
Oh, no, they're not saying
But
that.
I think the rule holds, doesn't it? Like in general,
right,
I don't
in
care if you're in a
general.
Christian or non-Christian context. Men get a pass on the way they look. Women don't.
Right, I think it kind of reinforced to me how incredibly powerful female beauty is as a drug, and that male beauty just doesn't do it. It's not nearly as...
I think it's because women look inside more often than they look at the outside.
What?
Well, men are more likely to look at women as something to collect. Women typically don't look at men as something to collect.
The argument...
Except for Amanda and you, because she wanted to show you off.
Right.
You're her trophy husband.
I know this would not go down well with some of our audience, but there's an evolutionary explanation for this.
We can't even...
I believe that.
Don't say evolutionary, say biological.
Biological.
Biologically changing over time.
I'm not afraid of the word evolution.
Biologically changing over time. I'm not doing this.
Have you seen there's a meme going around, or a whole...
Meme?
Ma'am?
Mammy!
Mammy!
Yes,
No,
there's a meme.
or maybe it was on Tumblr. I forget where it was. But the
Tumbling meme?
A mime?
This is exciting.
There was a mime on America's Got Talent last night. It was
I went to the
hilarious.
emergency room last night. Did I tell you about it? Okay, there's a meme, tumbling. Go.
So the Kardashian wedding that happened recently?
Yes.
The pastor who conducted this wedding,
Yeah.
I forget his name because I don't have my computer in front of me. He's down in Miami Beach, somewhere like that. Young guy.
Was it Lucian Greaves?
No, but everyone is going nuts about how incredibly handsome this guy is.
Really?
I mean, he does look like a model. I mean, it's just. But now it's like gotten all this buzz and attention because he's like this,
when Brent
the world's
Musburger
sexiest
pointed
pastor.
out A.J. McCarron's girlfriend in the championship game, the football championship game a year ago. Do you remember that?
Is that called the Super Bowl?
No, college.
Oh.
College.
I don't know what he's talking about.
NCAA championship.
Yeah, it was Alabama versus, and she became an instant celebrity, and now she has endorsement deals, and she's doing ads just because somebody put her on TV and said, "Holy cow, is she good looking?" Now her life has changed because we've assigned value to her. Oh, she's very valuable. May I have a piece of your value? Which is all we want from each other.
Which is why celebrity is very
wrong.
shallow and hollow.
I know,
and
it's just wrong.
empty.
But could we like do a whole show just with average women, just normal women?
You have one.
It's reality TV, I guess.
No, I was saying this is.
I'm an average
We have
woman.
one. We have a show with an average woman.
With all.
Oh, with all,
Like
three
all.
average women.
All just normal people
It
that
is Friday.
aren't the extremes. Which is why it's so hard to be a female actress, because most women, even if they are that rare, perfect body type, you're only that body type for 10 years.
Wait a minute. Back up a minute, though.
And it's the really rare ones that can ride it like, Demi Moore for decades. What?
I'm thinking of some sitcoms. I don't watch a lot of TV, but I see sitcoms from time to time.
If you play the mom or the grandma.
the mom, the wife, the female lead character, I'd say there's some average.
But there's no Roseannes anymore.
And there was one Roseanne.
Yeah, but she got in because she was funny.
Yes.
Right, you can get in if you're funny.
But
Yeah, you
that's
get
the
a
point,
pass.
though. To get on
Even
TV, you
Sarah-
have to have some talent. Whether some people's talent is
Right.
they just stand there and look beautiful. Other people, they actually are
but
intelligent or they're
even
funny.
To be funny, typically it'd be more like Sarah Silverman. You're funny and pretty. That works. Just funny. Then you could be funny like the girl from the Bridesmaid movie.
Oh, yeah.
Melissa McCarthy.
Yes.
Yes, where she's she's so cute though. She's
She
so
is cute.
stinking cute, but she's like a female John Belushi.
I was going to say the same thing.
Yeah, there you go. Okay,
so-
enough about that. Several weeks ago, we had Peter Boghossian on the show. Peter Boghossian is the atheist author of the book Manual for Creating Atheists. He's a philosophy professor at Portland State University. I challenged him on the premise of his book. Some of his friends responded. I ended up corresponding with Peter. He ended up coming on the show to talk about his definition of faith. Well, 2 weeks ago, our friend of the show, Justin Brierley, interviewed Peter Boghossian on his British show, the unbelievable radio show, premiere.uk.org. old Britain. Cheese grommet, and they interviewed him there. They had a debate. Sorry about that. They had a debate between Peter Boghossian and Christian philosopher Tim McGrew of Western Michigan University, who's an apologist and also specializes in epistemology, which is the very area that Peter Boghossian was focusing on. So if you haven't listened to it, go to premier.org.uk.
Just Google
Google Unbelievable Podcast. Go to iTunes. I don't care. We should do a link on our.
Good luck.
We should
Find it
probably
yourself.
do a link on our show. Anyway, so he had Peter Boghossian on, and they had a really lively debate, and I listened to it, and Sky listened to it. Did you listen to it?
I had no idea what was going
right.
on.
That's okay.
Thanks for including me, boys.
And I thought it was so interesting that I talked to Justin and said, would you come on the show, and so we can talk about the debate, so we can debate your debate on my show. And so I just did an interview, about a 15-minute interview, which I'm going to play for you right now. Here it is. I'm here with Justin Brierley. He is on the wire from London. He was gracious enough to jump back in because he did the very interesting debate last week with friend of the show, Peter Boghossian, my friend and yours, my favorite atheist of the week. And I thought it was an interesting, because I didn't really debate. I don't really debate because I don't have the chutzpah of Justin in setting up these frighteningly intimidating debates and sitting in there like a lion tamer between large, ferocious beasts. But Justin just loves that sort of thing. It's, you know, how he knows he's still alive. So he did that. So Justin, we're talking about the debate between Peter Boghossian from Portland State University and Christian philosopher Tim McGrew from Western Michigan University. I found in general that Tim's positions were pretty close to some of my positions that I took online and when I was trying to talk to Peter, but much more academically stated.
Yeah. Well, that's not to say you didn't do a great job. I think you did, Phil, in terms of what you brought out of that debate that you had with Peter. But as you say, Tim McGrew, he is a philosopher by background, so he's used to kind of being very precise and analytical with his terms. And yeah, I think generally the view is it was a somewhat anticipated debate. I honestly hadn't expected it to have as much impact as it obviously has, though, online. And generally, I think a lot of people thought that he held the feet of Boghossian to the fire, you know, in terms of what he made him answer to.
Epistemologically speaking.
Indeed, exactly.
The epistemological fire. So has the general reaction been, we think that the Christian philosopher really held his own and pointed out some flaws?
Well, yeah, I think generally that's been certainly the response of the vast majority of Christians. In fact, all the Christians I can think of have certainly said.
Is it ever different, though? Do the Christians ever say the Christian guy really lost this one?
They do, and sometimes if there's been a bad attitude or something's not, you know, gone so well, or especially if Christians who maybe feel that a Christian on my show didn't defend the gospel or the Bible or whatever as well as they could have, then they'll come in for criticism from fellow Christians. But in this case, everyone across the board seems to think that Tim McGrew did a fantastic job at answering some of the issues. I think particularly this issue of how to define faith and Tim's view that it's not about simply believing something, it's about putting your trust in something that you have evidence for. And I thought his analogy with the skydiving was quite good. This idea that you could have 99.9%, if you like, evidence that people who go skydiving land safely. Nonetheless, when you jump out of the aeroplane, you are still putting your trust in that. And that's a bit like faith. That's what you do with faith. You put your trust in something, having had evidence that it will support you, if you like.
What kind of feedback have you gotten from your atheist or skeptic listeners?
Again, interestingly, that's sort of somewhat split between those who, you know, wanted to argue with Tim McGrew's definition of faith and those who think that he actually did a good job actually at punching some holes in Boghossian's definition. And so that's interestingly been a mixture, whereas you might expect all the atheists to line up with Boghossian and all the Christians to line up with Tim. It hasn't been quite like that.
Right.
And
well, did you read James Lindsay's blog post? I think you may have
I did,
tweeted
yeah. I actually
he called it a draw,
he called it a draw. I think he said Tim McGrew on style and Boghossian on substance, though I wouldn't say that was really what I took away from it. I thought Tim had a lot of substance in what he said. Some have come back to say that they thought Tim McGrew's view that the vast majority of Christians do believe that faith is about trusting in something with evidence, that that's actually not necessarily their experience. So someone emailed me to say, he interacts with a lot of Christians who seem to say, once you've kind of questioned a lot of their evidence, they'll finally say, well, it's just a faith thing, which suggests that it's not an evidence thing. So it depends on who you're speaking to, and a lot of this is anecdotal. I did try to poll the views.
Yes,
of
how did your
Christians,
poll go?
Well, interestingly, so I sort of let it carry on for about a week and then closed it down. We had about 700 votes altogether on this Facebook poll, most of them in the Christian poll. So I divided it between Christians. I asked, do you believe that when Christians use the word faith, they mean belief without adequate evidence?
Right.
And then I asked the same question of non-Christians. And 91% of the Christians polled said, no, they don't believe that's the way Christians use the word faith. Only 9% agreed. Whereas with the atheist, I think it was something like 71% off the top of my head agreed that that's the way Christians use the word faith, and 29% or whatever said no. So
not terrifically surprising.
Not really. Very much, a polarization in opposite directions.
Do you think? Okay, so this is a question for Justin, from Justin's well-educated and well-informed background. Do you think the word faith is confusing, and that some of this confusion between the skeptical crowd, is understandable and justified?
I think that there is a certain amount of justification, because I do think many Christians on the ground haven't really thought through exactly what they mean by faith.
Right.
And I'm sure there are some who do use it in some kind of a way that Boghossian suggests, in terms of I just really believe this, and aren't necessarily thinking of evidence. I think that if you actually ask them, though, and walk them through it, most of them would actually come out thinking about it. I think it is actually something that's more like a trust based in evidence, if you like.
Is it an education issue? Do we have to, in essence, educate, kind of the common Christian in the street, to walk them to the accurate position?
I think it would be helpful, especially, I think that's the job a lot of pastors, really, so that they're clear on what it means to live by faith and to do things by faith. Because I think the problem is that in our culture, different people are trying to clarify or identify or determine what the word faith means. And I think Peter Boghossian is one of them, if you like.
Yeah.
I certainly think that very few Christians, if you ask them, does faith to you mean pretending to know what you don't know? I think very few would say yes to that.
I think that's a pretty easy kind of a straw man definition to knock down. Because pretending implies deceit and
exactly
intent to deceive.
Exactly. So, and I think, if you listen back to the program I recorded, Boghossian isn't exactly leaping at the opportunity to defend that particular definition.
Well, in the same way when you had Richard Dawkins on the show, and one of your other guests, read his long diatribe against the evil God of the Old Testament, and he didn't defend it. He just kind of said, "I kind of do that for humorous effect."
Yeah.
So give me a break. Come on.
Yeah, exactly. But in any case, I really appreciated both of them coming on, and we did go around that kind of faith definition for quite a bit in the show. And
yes.
I kind of wanted to cover a lot more. I wanted us even to get onto the issue.
Don't we always want to cover a lot more? You did get in, and you kind of jumped into, if you say you want civil discourse, why do you say that we're mentally ill? Because that's not a good way to start it. and I was almost thinking, gee, does Justin have a bone to pick? Is he?
Well, I think I've appreciated the way Peter has been very civil, especially as we've been arranging it, and he's been tweeting on Twitter and so on that he's really pleased to have been able to do these dialogues both with yourself and myself. And that was great, but it did jar a little bit with what I read in the actual book. With the way he describes faith as a virus of the mind. He uses quite pejorative language about it, but hasn't he inherited that language? Because that's what from what he would describe as the four horsemen of the apocalypse. It's Dawkins' language, it's Hitchens' language. It seems like there's a generation of atheists that are kind of coming to age steeped in the antagonistic language of these, three or four other key guys who have been very antagonistic and not really thinking about how that language comes across. I think that's true, and I think part of it is being more aware of the way the other side will receive what you're saying, because I think if people like Peter Boghossian are wanting to persuade Christians, and I think there is an element to which he's hoping to do that, then there are better and worse ways of going about doing it, and immediately putting people's backs up isn't always the best way to do it. Just as if I was engaging with an atheist and started to use terms that I knew were going to wind them up, it's probably not actually going to. It might be great for rhetorical effect, but it won't necessarily be good for the purpose of actually helping them to change their mind on something.
Right. I almost wonder if he honestly didn't think Christians would read the book. If we're reading something that was supposed to be, this was just for us. This is like inside baseball. You're not supposed to know this cable channel even exists.
I don't know. I mean, I think he did sort of try to suggest that those kinds of issues are not where he would begin the conversation. So on, these are what he calls containment strategies. I think, though, it's, at the end of the day, whether you're reading it first chapter or the 9th chapter, as a Christian, you're going to find some of that stuff pretty unpalatable, or feel that you're being in some way branded as mentally ill and so on. And I think that's got all kinds of problems. Now, we're going to try and set up a second round, if you like. And what I really wanted to get to, and we didn't get to, was actually talking about the evidence for God. Because, if you like, we've talked about everything but that. And what I haven't really seen in Peter's writing yet is his actual take on some of the classic arguments for God, which I think, in a way, you're talking about the fine details when we're talking about the definition of faith. I think the real question is, well, is there any evidence there at all anyway?
But surely we've had that conversation before many times, right? We have.
It
seems to me that what Peter is really adding uniquely is this approach, this epistemological approach to how you know things is flawed, and I am going to point that out. And I pointed out to him that if you read his book, in his what does he call them, his interventions with the mentally ill, meaning us, the word faith never comes up. The word faith never appears in any of the recorded interventions. So, and I was kind of pressing, are you sure this is really what your argument is with? Is it really with faith, or is it really with people that hold positions that you find illogical? Because it seems like we're using faith as kind of a convenient bucket to contain the concept of, I think you're holding an illogical position. The only way I can grasp why you would hold that is by appealing to religious authority.
I think that might be a valid way of looking at it, and I think what is interesting about what Peter Boghossian has done is he's asked us to look afresh at what we mean by faith, and I think that's a worthwhile thing to do. And if it's helped Christians and non-Christians to be more precise with their definitions on that front, then I think that's probably overall a good thing. It certainly gave me a lot of food for thought, and certainly is an issue that I could imagine us returning to again at some point. But I know that for me, I will, I guess, from henceforth, be a little bit more careful about the way I use the word faith.
I know. I've become very aware of it because James Lindsay, who's a mathematician and a good friend of Peter Boghossian's, he was one of the first guys to defend my critique of Peter's book, and I ended up in a fairly long interaction with him. And why did I start telling you this? I just completely lost my train of thought.
That happens to all of us.
What did you just say? What?
I said I'm going to be be more careful about the way I use faith.
Exactly. Okay.
Yeah.
Yes. So James Lindsay, Peter Boghossian likes to play kind of the mind game where he says, take this saying with the word faith in it and now replace that. You know, so I have faith in God. Now replace that with pretend to know things I don't know. So I pretend to know things I don't know about God. That's what it really means. And James Lindsay took a recent papal missive about faith and said, all right, just take one paragraph of this and replace all those phrases and see what you get. And the funny thing is I'm reading it and the Pope is saying, we see with the light of faith through the eyes of faith that faith reveals to us, and I'm like, I don't even know what he's saying. So is so poetic that it seemed almost meaningless.
I think the word in the original Greek or whatever is piscis or something, isn't it?
Yes,
and I think some people say, well, if you're looking for a better definition, maybe trust or something like that is what we should be talking about more generally.
Right.
Because the word faith for many people has different connotations, and so we may not be transmitting what the original writers really had in mind when we use this word faith, depending on what other people hear. But I like the idea of trust. I think that perhaps does better encapsulate a lot of the time what Christians mean when they say they have faith.
And then, because then what we can say to some of these critics is, okay, if I stop using the word faith and only use the word trust, then can I keep being a Christian? Or do you still have an argument with me? Okay.
Yeah,
I don't want to take any more of your time because you're a busy guy, because you're running a magazine. You're the editor-in-chief of Christianity Magazine.
Yeah. It's to give it its full title now, it's Premier Christianity Magazine. It's part of the Premier family. But yeah, it's very exciting times. It's
if we Yanks wanted to read said magazine, how could we find it?
Well, the easiest way, we live in this wonderful age of the internet, as it's called, Phil.
Really?
And believe it or not. And we have a whole new website, actually. It's very, very convenient that I'm talking to you just a week after our new website has launched.
Wow, fantastic.
So that's premierchristianity.com. And there's loads of interviews and features. You can read some of my recent ones on miracles. I've been researching global miracles. My recent discussions with A.C. Grayling and Bart Ehrman are on there as well.
Fantastic.
So go and have fun. Look around.
Okay, what's the website again?
Premierchristianity.com.
Premier Christianity, Premier.
Yeah, that's right.
Christianity.com. Okay, and do you have any events coming up? Like, I don't know, do you have a birthday party or are you being bar mitzvahed anytime soon? Is there anything coming up that we should be excited about?
Well, funnily enough, funny that you should ask that question, Phil, because I do have a conference coming up. Actually.
Really? Tell me more.
Well, if you've got the time and money to fly over, Phil, it's happening on Saturday, the 12th of July. But certainly if you're in the UK, you wouldn't want to miss it. It's happening in central London. It's called Unbelievable, the Conference 2014, Reasonable Faith in an Uncertain World. And we're basically bussing in a load of experts from the UK and America to take part. So people like William Lane Craig, Craig Hazen, Jeff Swearink, Clay Jones from the States. And from here in the UK, we've got Os Guinness, David Robertson, Tanya Walker, Ruth Jackson, and all kinds of covers and all kinds of issues and topics being discussed and talked about. Evidence for God, reliability of Scripture, evidence for the resurrection. How do I engage with atheists? How do I engage with young people? Evangelism and much more besides. It's going to be a fantastic day.
That sounds like a whole lot of fun. It's July. If someone did have the wherewithal to show up in London on July 12th, where do you get more info about it?
You'd have to go to premier.org.uk/reasonable faith. That's the website to find out more information, to book tickets, and it'd be great to see anyone.
Shouldn't we be talking about how to stage one of those conferences in the U.S. at some point and bring you over here?
Well, that would be fun. I mean, it's fair to say, though, that you do have your fair share of apologetics conferences in the US, and
I do.
Whereas we in the UK, it's kind of a new thing here. So it's something we've only really started in the last few years. So I've concentrated my efforts here, knowing that you're well provided for already in the States. But I would love to come over to the States and do some stuff. And
yes,
well, actually, it's very much in the sort of early stages, but I'm possibly looking at a trip to the US next year in some way, shape, or form. So who knows?
The Justin Brierley World Tour.
I'm not sure about that.
With groupies and a bus and stadiums filled with screaming girls.
More like 3 small children and my wife is probably what we're looking at. But,
it's the next British invasion. Well, thanks for your time, Justin. I appreciate it. And I'm hoping I can get you on when we've got something interesting either coming up on our show that can impact your show or on your show that can impact our show.
Great. Well, let's keep talking, and thank you for having me on, Phil.
You're welcome. Thanks, Justin. That was my interview with Justin Brierley about his interview with Peter Boghossian and Tim McGrew. Sky, you listened to it driving back from Taylor University, where you were this year's commencement speaker.
Yes.
And you sent them all off to pursue their dreams and
he crushed their dreams.
Find jobs.
He stamped on them.
No, that's my job.
No, he did it fairly well.
Okay.
So I'm told.
What did you think of the Boghossian-McGrew debate? Because it's been lighting up the blogosphere.
Has it really?
A little bit.
I have to admit that I actually felt a little bad for Mr. Boghossian.
Yeah.
Because I think he got trounced.
Ooh,
really?
Yeah. Those are strong words.
Yeah.
He's not easily trounced.
No, but it didn't go well.
Well, why do you think it?
Well,
why do you say that, Sky? You're a thoughtful man.
Because what it came down to is there what a Mr. McGrew.
Yes.
Is that his name?
Yes.
I want to say Mr. McGee.
Tim
or
McGrew.
Mr. Magoo.
McGee, McGraw.
It's kind of like a mime.
He's an epistemologist. He's a Christian, and he gave all kinds of wonderful argumentation for the correct definition of faith. And Peter Boghossian never disagreed with his definition. He never countered with a different definition. All he said was, yeah, that's the correct definition of faith, but that's not what most Christians...
That's not the practical usage.
Yeah, and I'm going, but... So you're basing the whole premise of your book about how to make atheists is based not on an accurate definition, but on your anecdotal idea of what the definition of faith should be. And
no, what it is in the wild.
In the wild, but...
Yes, not what it is in the Oxford English Dictionary.
And then McGrew came back and said, yes, but the Oxford English Dictionary bases their definitions on popular usage. And if this was a popular usage of the word, as you're defining it, it would be there, and it's not. So not only does Peter Boghossian stand against what Phil Vischer says the definition of faith is, and
which is a serious charge in and of itself.
And against what a philosophy professor and epistemologist says it is, and not only against what the Oxford English Dictionary says it is, but he now has got only a tiny percentage of maybe misinformed people out there who use it the way he does that he's building his entire argument on. And he couldn't defend it. It was sad because it really became clear that the basic foundation of his book is flawed. And then the whole thing crumbles. And I almost kind of felt bad for him.
But you know what? Here's the thing. It is not going to matter a lick. You guys are talking inside baseball.
Nuh-uh.
Yes,
We're not.
You are. You're
We're
talking
not,
inside
Christian.
baseball. And the people that are going to be reading his book are not going to care about any of those things.
I agree.
And they are just going to take what he says and run with it.
And there's plenty of that on all sides. He's writing, I think, he's preaching to the choir, the atheist choir in this case, and there's plenty of other Christian books who are preaching to the Christian choir about atheists. But he's not. I don't think the book is.
I think. See, he didn't come up with his definition. His first definition is faith is belief without evidence. Christian, would you pick up your drink before it runs out on my beautiful carpeting? Christian spilled her drink on my TV show, Mom. Make her clean it up.
Sorry.
Put away that branded product, Sky.
What? Nobody can see that.
Oh, okay. For heaven's sakes.
Our podcast is going to heck in a handbasket.
Terrible podcast. I'm not even going to watch it anymore. His definition, first definition is faith is belief without evidence, which he gets from Richard Dawkins, who I imagine got it from somewhere else because he doesn't seem to have a whole lot of new thoughts. He repeats other atheist authors, but does it more loudly. So that came out of atheist circles. But his second definition of faith is pretending to know things you don't know, which that one doesn't get very far. And he didn't even try to defend it, because it's hard to defend a usage that no one really uses.
And I think the point that McGrew made, that was a really good one, is that nobody believes things without evidence. They all have evidence. The question is it good evidence? Is it
evidence that you find viable?
Right. So I may say, well, I believe in God because I had this rapturous experience at one point in my life. And you might, as a scientist, say, that's not evidence.
Right.
But I'm going to say, yeah, it is evidence. But the definition is not in question. It's still based on evidence. It's the quality and the legitimacy of the evidence. And what Boghossian wants to say is, no, faith is believing things without any evidence. And nobody does that.
So here's kind of, I think, where things have shifted. David Hume was an Enlightenment philosopher, and he established, or attempted to establish, a principle, because he was all about inductive reasoning and how do we know. He was very much about epistemology. He attempted to establish the principle that belief should be proportionate to evidence. So, and Carl Sagan has basically took that and turned it into this phrase, which is very popular in skeptical circles today. What was his phrase? Oh, that extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence. So if you are telling me something very unusual, you need to demonstrate an unusual amount of evidence, or I'm not going to believe it. The thing with that argument is that it doesn't apply to me, the firsthand experiencer.
Right.
You know, it applies if I want to convince you that I just saw a unicorn. Okay, you might never believe me, but that doesn't mean I have to stop believing I saw a unicorn. So what convinces me, what is reasonable to me, what is enough evidence to me, doesn't necessarily have to be enough for you. There's a subjectivity to evidential support that is kind of ignored in this thinking of that everyone has an experience, and you determine whether you believe your experience is valid or not. I find some of these...
Well, that sounds like you're saying truth is relative.
No, I'm saying the weight of evidence is subjective.
I agree. Here's what I think they're doing, whether it's Carl Sagan or Peter Boghossian or Neil deGrasse Tyson, whoever it might be.
He's my favorite.
These are generally scientists, and they have a scientific worldview on the universe. And what they're saying is, for me to accept religious belief, you have to prove it to me through the lens of science. And that's fine. That's the position they want to take.
Fundamentally, it has to be repeatable.
Right.
So make that happen again.
Right. So that's fine. That's the evidence. That's the way they want to look at the world. But what they're unwilling to acknowledge is that there are other paradigms by which one can engage the universe other than science.
You know, surely, let's put the God question aside. Surely there's enough evidence to say that supernatural things occur.
No.
They wouldn't say that.
No, they would dispute
because by
that.
very definition, a supernatural thing can't be engaged through science. So
you can't,
therefore,
if you can make it happen. There's a guy, a skeptic in Canada, who's offered $1 million for like 30 years to anyone who can appear before him and demonstrate something verifiably paranormal. And in 30 years, no one's been able to do it.
To go back to the original idea of epistemology, what they're saying is the only legitimate epistemology is the scientific method. That's the only way you can legitimately know something.
Right.
And that's actually a much narrower definition of epistemology than anyone else would be willing to accept.
Which I think is what the real argument is about, and it's a philosophical argument, not a religious argument. It's what are valid forms of knowledge. You know, it's why Dallas Willard wrote his book, Knowing Christ Today, which is basically just an argument that spiritual knowledge is in fact valid knowledge, even though the academic world has abandoned it and says it no longer is. The second definition in Oxford English Dictionary for
the OED.
The OED, yes, I like that code.
I know somebody that's named OED. It looks like OED.
Oh yeah, Ed Ronnie.
Ed Ronnie.
Yeah, it's Ed, though.
I don't know why he does that.
I know, because it reminds him of the Oxford English Dictionary. The first definition is putting faith or confidence in someone or something. That's like the most basic definition of faith. But this is the second definition of faith in the Oxford English Dictionary: belief proceeding from reliance on testimony or authority. which I think is really interesting because it's not about religion. It's about having a belief because of something that you have heard or been told, as opposed to determined through experimentation.
In which case, the evidence rests in the credibility of the source.
Right. So it's putting trust in a source that you can't verify. And that's where a lot of these guys would just say, well, you just got to pick that up and throw it away. You don't trust. And that's the skeptical community is reject authority. It was also part of the Protestant Reformation, was saying, okay, these priests say they're the only ones who can read the Bible and then tell us what it means. We're rejecting your authority. We're disintermediating you guys. It's us and the Bible.
What's that word mean?
Thank you. It's taking the middleman out.
Well, no, to be a bit more nuanced about that.
No, that was right.
No, nuance.
What the Reformation was saying is, you're right, we're not going to trust the authority of these priests. Instead, we're going to take that and we're going to put our trust in the apostles and in their testimony, which is recorded in the New Testament.
Right.
So that it's just the exchange of trust from one group of people to another.
Then that wave carried on to the free thinkers who said, "Wait a minute, we don't even want to trust." It turned into just me and the Bible,
which is
from me and the church and the Bible.
I think what we need to do is put this new breed of atheists. I think we should change their title.
Yeah. Okay.
I don't think we should call them atheists or even new atheists.
Good luck with that.
I think what they really are is scientific fundamentalists.
Oh.
Because a fundamentalist, whether you're talking about Christian fundamentalists,
you're going to make people mad.
No, really though, because the thing about a Christian fundamentalist is somebody who has a very narrow view of what's legitimate truth.
Yeah.
And everyone outside of that is regarded as,
So narrow-mindedness.
It's narrow-mindedness, and what they're saying is the only legitimate epistemology, the only way you can know something is through the scientific method. That is fundamentalism.
Well, it's narrow.
It's very narrow, and that's fundamentalism.
So it's narrow fundamentalism.
Well, I don't know if I'm going to go that far.
I would. I'd say they're scientific fundamentalists.
I have a question for you.
Okay, you can say that. I'm not going to.
But they would probably be proud of that, to say no, because I can prove what I know through scientific method.
Yeah, but not proud of you calling them fundamentalists, because that's like
if the shoe fits,
that's worse than calling someone a racist.
Yes, it's about equivalent. I think from their point of view.
If the shoe fits,
I would think.
And if the shoe can be fit repeatedly and proven to fit, then.
So if it rules out knowledge like a duck and something else like a duck, it is a duck. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
Yeah. So can I ask my question now?
Ask your question. Go for it.
Okay.
Then we got to wrap up.
So let me ask you this: if I wanted to read historical documents that back up the testament of the disciples and the other people there at the time of Jesus, what historical documents would you recommend I read?
The New Testament.
There you
that
go.
augment the New Testament.
That augment the
that
New
are not
Testament.
the Bible, outside the Bible.
That verify the Bible.
That's what I'm asking, yes.
There really aren't many.
That's a problem.
There's a handful. There's a book you can get.
Well, that's
I have it on my
because
shelf.
all the ones from the first century were collected and are in the Bible.
That's why they're there.
That's why
So
they're there.
I mean, this is a chicken and egg thing, but the early church, when they were codifying the Bible, the New Testament, they were looking at, okay, what do we know was written by one of the apostles or by somebody who knew one of the apostles? And then is this document, this letter, this gospel, widely affirmed by the entire church? If it's only affirmed by one region of the church, we're not going to include it. So, like, for example, there were some gospels, I'm using air quotes, that were commonplace in Egypt or North Africa, more Gnostic gospels, that the rest of the known world didn't acknowledge as authoritative, so they didn't include them in the Bible. But what you have in the New Testament is essentially the documents that the early church recognized as being authoritative from the apostles or somebody directly connected to an apostle, and that's what we collected.
But surely there were other governmental agencies or something that was writing history at the same time.
Well, there's things like Josephus. There's Josephus. There's a book you can get.
There weren't governmental agencies, though, that wrote history. There just weren't.
There's a book on my shelf you can borrow if you want. I think it's called Documents from the Early Christian Centuries or something like that, which has the first 4 or 5 centuries of Christianity and a lot of the early documents. Non-biblical documents about the early church. Some of that gets verified and things, but that's part of the dilemma with the Bible. Not the dilemma, it's just that it is
unique.
Do
you know what it means when Phil starts playing the ukulele?
Yes, I do.
Wrap it up.
It's time to wrap it up. What should I sing about? Pick something.
I would say fundamental
That'll make my friends
fundamental
mad.
narrow-mindedness in the scientific community. Good luck with that.
Science the only way to know all the things that you're wanting to know? Well, if only you know what you can show in a test tube or in an incubator or the petri dish to get to grow, then you're kind of limited in what you can believe, because love and truth are things that don't conceive any growth in a petri dish. No matter how hard Carl Sagan might wish, most of the stuff that really matters just can't be quantified into dots and zeros and numbers on a chart. Thank you. And that's why Albert Einstein said, not everything that counts can be counted, and not everything that can be counted counts. See you next time.